What's up guys, Anton here at DPR. Is Monsoon really a recessive gene? Is it incomplete dominant? Does it matter? What do we know? If you're ready, let's jump right into that. So speaking of Monsoon, here's another opportunity to show you guys some of the Monsoons I made this year. This is one of the female yellow belly Monsoon. This animal is sold and they're all extremely aggressive, which is good because they're extremely good eaters. So Monsoon is a incredibly busy pattern animal. You can see that the pattern from the dorsal is just so accentuated and we are so far from the regular looking ball python. This gene is absolutely phenomenal. So basically having a gene that is so strong, so dominant, so powerful, we can argue that, this animal could potentially have extremely visual markers. We have to keep in mind that piebald, paint, and sometimes even sunset or lavender do have some markers where, the pied have the belly tracks. Some of the head sunset are very bright and very colorful, and some of the paint are really granity looking animal. So on the table now, I have two regular ball python. One of them is a het Monsoon proven, and one of them is basically not het Monsoon. Can you guess which one is the het Monsoon and which isn't? If you said this animal, you're basically correct. This animal proved het Monsoon. This is basically the mother of my Monsoon clutch of this season. And I'm gonna dive a little bit into what are the patterns, what are the key traits that we're looking for from Monsoon. I'm gonna put this one back first of all. So basically, one of the first thing that you'll notice is how busy this animal looks. When we talk about busyness, we really talk about you're losing the regular alien heads and you really have either floating alien heads like this right here. This is kind of floating, it's not attached to the belly. And the other thing is they're very narrow and there's a lot of those alien heads. We can also talk about alien heads crossing from one side to the other. Usually the typical ones are just basically just like this and are not crossing like this one, for example. Genes like Enshi or stuff like that are known to cross a lot from one side to the other, and the het Monsoon is really doing that. So you really have some funky alien heads. See, this one is floating. These are disconnected, detached, and by looking at that on its own, I had a strong feeling that this female would prove, and she did. She produced 4 Monsoons for me this season, and basically from the markers, you could already tell that this animal would very likely prove to be het for Monsoon. So this is another female that I'm holding back for the Monsoon project. She's a 50% het Monsoon animal. And this one is kind of in between the regular looking ball python and the Monsoon with really great markers. She had a little bit of that head stamp. She has a busy pattern, but it's not too busy. There's not a lot of floating alien heads. Most of them are attached and connected to the belly. As you can see, there's really not that many that are floating. So this is kind of a semi-great marker example for the het Monsoon. She's not proven yet. Unfortunately, we do not have the het Monsoon test by genetic testing. That would really simplify our lives. It's probably coming very soon, but for the moment we don't. So it's really about relying on our breeder's eye to be able to spot some markers on these animals. So this animal, I held it back. I basically held everything back, whether they had markers or not, just because I wanted to test and prove the theory. This animal, I'm 50-50 on it. What do you think? So another trait for these het Monsoon is that they are basically venomous snakes and they behave like venomous snake. This animal is absolutely pissed. I've rarely seen a ball python that you hold in an assist feeding position and they try to eat and bite and they're absolutely crazy. This specific animal is absolutely crazy. So no way I put this on the table and I managed to show you some markers. So I'll have to hold, look at that, it's absolutely insane. So I'll have to hold this animal like this to show you some of the markers, but it's gonna be a little bit easier. So one of the main traits for het Monsoon, that great particularity, is basically the head stamp. I'll try to grab a little bit better. Just look at that. That's so mean. All right. Okay, so you see that there's a crazy head stamp there. And this is basically one of the main markers for het Monsoon. You typically never get splotches, a pattern like this on an animal. And the het Monsoon is really creating it. Now, again, like I was saying before, you got an extreme amount of busyness. There's so many alien heads going on there. It's way more busy than usual, and you get those floating alien heads, a little bit like bubbles from a lava lamp. You have it really well there. So this is another basically the head stamp, the busyness, and the floating pattern. And the third one, oh my god, that's this snake is crazy. Then the third one is very thin and narrow eye stripe, where typically this part here would be a little bit larger. On some of the het monsoons, you have something that's a little bit more narrow, but usually you go for the head stamp and how busy this animal looks. So let's introduce other incomplete dominance with the monsoon part, and we'll see a little bit of the markers here. These are high marker expression. This is an orange dream and this is yellow belly. If we go with the OD on this one, you have that head stamp. You see little 3 dots. Often it comes as like 3 dots, like a bit of a pumpkin head patch. Very interesting. Then you have an amount of busyness that's really insane. Usually OD are fairly clean, fairly without that kind of pocketing keyholes. And now you have it going all over the place, zigzagging from one side to the other with some floating alien heads, really all over the place. So this is OD, strong marker expression. So I would say that this animal would definitely prove to be het for monsoon. And then yellow belly, in my opinion, is kind of one that really takes the cake. All of the yellow belly posset monsoons that I think will prove have insane markers. So you see on this animal, obviously those 3 dots, this pumpkin head is really cool. If you look at that little pumpkin head of this behind is really awesome. So as I was saying, the head stamp and then the busyness of the pattern. You don't get that many floating one with yellow belly, as yellow belly is really taking the pattern from the belly, creating those flames. You don't get as many floating alien heads, but you definitely get some crazy funky pattern on the dorsal. And sometimes you'll get even more, almost like a yellow belly lace, like even more popcorn going effect on the sides. But on the yellow belly, like everything is so much more accentuated. This one is including fire with it. No other gene. Can you believe that's just a fire? The amount of busyness, once more, like how much alien heads are there, it's absolutely crazy. The pattern is going all over the place. You have that sort of head stamp. It's not so much as like 3 little dots, whereas a splotch of pattern on the head. And again, that's like highly venomous vibe where the snakes are following you and trying to eat your hands. These snakes are absolutely crazy, or eat someone that's filming the camera for me right now. So these snakes are highly visual. I would bet money on this animal proving out. In fact, she's a female and she's a holdback. Even though I can't test, I'm definitely thinking that this animal will prove to be het monsoon. This one is basically including the last 2 genes we showed, fire and yellow belly, inside of one animal. And this is absolutely stupid. And you have a crazy head stamp that has no comparable. The pattern is super funky. You have it going on one side to the other once more. It boosts the flaming and makes some insane pattern. And if I show you a side by side, unfortunately the next animal isn't shed, but this is a regular fire yellow belly. Obviously don't look at the color because that animal isn't shed, but just look at obviously the head stamp and then the pattern and how busy the het monsoon actually is. It's really impressive to have a gene that's basically venomous snake. What I was saying, they're absolutely nuts aggressive. I'm a huge fan of OD, and this is basically mixing all of the 3 genes that I've been showing all in one. This is OD yellow belly fire, 66% het monsoon, and I would bet all my snake collection that this animal will prove to be het monsoon. Not only is the pattern crazy, you have a very bold head stamp, you have insane amount of pattern, it's going all over the place. But not only that, the color is truly spectacular. You have almost an animal that looks like a, desert ghost. And you have those spots of intense coloration, like diamonds of pattern. This is absolutely wild. Usually, the pattern's going like this or like that. But now having splits of flames going across the animal is really exceptional. And you have heavy popcorn on those sides. I wonder what lace would do instead of this combo. That would be truly phenomenal. Obviously, lace monsoon is some of the direction that I want to take in the future. I love lace, I love monsoon. I think these 2 genes are made to be with one another. But this is basically a high strong influence het monsoon on this animal. So obviously, if it was just those super strong markers all the time, either they have it or they don't, then it's a super easy deal and it's very easy to tell them apart. But that's not really the case. Sometimes you'll get animals that are a little bit in between. You'll have a little bit of markers, but not as crazy to be like, oh yeah, this is for sure het monsoon. But then it comes from a monsoon clutch, you're like, this very well could be a het monsoon, but it's not absolutely insane. On all the post het monsoon clutches that I've made in the past, that's a really recurrent thing that I've been seeing. You have some very strong pattern animal. You have some in the middle and some that don't really have anything. Then how do you really quantify having some that are extremely visual, some that are not so much, and some not at all? To me, it's a little bit complicated, especially that it's so early in the project. We don't have genetic testing. We're just basing ourselves on our breeder's eye, and that's, to me, not enough to say Monsoon is incomplete dominant or Monsoon is 100% recessive. Right now, it's really complicated. Based on that, when we have more samples or genetic testing, we'll be able to test everything, and maybe some of the animals with insane markers won't prove, maybe some animals with okay markers will prove. And then if we have that range of insane markers and very subtle markers, is it really an incomplete gene, or is it a recessive that's so strong that it's bleeding through as a het, but sometimes the bleeding through is not enough? I'll show you some animals that have markers but are not absolutely crazy like some of the others. So here's one example. This is a super OD 66% het for Monsoon, and I do see some markers, but on the other hand, I don't see enough to be like, oh yeah, this is for sure head for Monsoon. What I'm seeing, obviously that head stamp, there's that little, splotch of pattern, small splotch, and then that blushing in the center. This is a good indicator, but if you look at the whole pattern, it's not too far from what you'd believe to be just a super OD. Really reduced, no pocket hole, no pattern going from one side to the other, and definitely nothing that's floating on those sides. Everything is really, really well attached to the belly. You don't really have anything that screams at you saying that this animal looks at Monsoon or doesn't look at Monsoon. That head stamp is really throwing me off. That's a female. Is going to be a holdback until I can have a shed test, and I will update probably you guys either on Instagram or on a YouTube video on some of the results. It would actually be pretty interesting if I do like a YouTube video on this animal. Here's the marker, prove the het, prove not het. That would be pretty interesting. So maybe I do that eventually. But this is where I'm saying that some animals, like I would not be confident selling this snake as wholesale as just a super OD. I do think that there's some possibility that this snake does prove het Monsoon. Could it be the head cryptic? She's also 50% head cryptic. Could it be that part playing on the head stamp? I don't know. I'm not too sure. If you look at the eye bands, they are thicker, but who knows? At this point, it's really complicated. One gene that I've produced a lot of Posset Monsoon with over the years is Pinstripe. It's so difficult to see any of the markers on Pinstripe. This happens to be a OD Yellow Belly Fire Pinstripe, 66% het Monsoon. The Pinstripe is taking so much of the pattern away and just making a little bit of a lining effect on the dorsal. You don't really see any head stamps. I've made probably like 8 or 9. Actually, no, I have 8 or 9 adults in the Pinstripe Posset Monsoon, and this year I've made 5 pin Posset Monsoon as well, and on not a single one of them am I able to say with confidence this animal is going to prove. Either I'm stupid unlucky and out of like 15 animals I've never made a pin that turns out to be het Monsoon, or the Pinstripe is really taking away that het Monsoon pattern. So in conclusion, if we talk about a little bit, is Monsoon recessive or incomplete dominant? I think right now it's really early to think about Monsoon being recessive or incomplete dominant, just because obviously it's so early. There's so little that has been made. All the possets we've created, how many have been paired, how many have proved out to be het or not het. It is really hard. And even on animals, like I have a clutch, I have a female with super strong marker. So she was paired to a male that's 100% het for Monsoon. Out of everything, no visual Monsoon, but I still do believe that this animal will prove out to be het Monsoon, just an unlucky, chain of events. No Monsoon visual there. But if we were to debate about Monsoon being incomplete dominant or recessive, my question to you is, does it really matter? Because what I mean by that is all incomplete dominants are basically acting the same way as recessive are doing. You need basically that super form and that regular form, that heterozygous and homozygous. That heterozygous in incomplete dominant is visually expressed, and in recessive it isn't. But if you start to see markers like on het pied with the tail tracks, sometimes the ringer, on some of the others like we discussed, if you start to see markers, does it mean that piebald is not a recessive and an incomplete dominant with very subtle markers? I don't think so. You can have a champagne het pied and have a visual pied. I think that we're seeing some things where, we have some strong markers. We have it very often, but not all the time. So until we have genetically proven that those animals with middle range markers are in fact monsoons or are in fact not het monsoons, this is where we can really draw the line and be like, we think that this animal should be an incomplete dominant or should be a recessive. My personal opinion, I think that Monsoon is recessive. I think it's the recessive with the most intense markers. I do believe that when you're producing animals that look like this, it doesn't really matter if the gene is recessive or not. I do think Monsoon is insanely powerful and has such a strong potential for the future. I absolutely love the project. This is the OD Yellow Belly Monsoon that I've made this season, and I can't wait to see the next step in creating the super ODs. So my goal with this video is not to create a flaming hot debate that, oh, Antoine at DPR said that Monsoon is not recessive. That's not my take. What I'm saying here is Monsoon has strong markers. Sometimes some of the animals that they're producing have mid-range marker or no markers at all. What I'm saying is it's complicated to know if Monsoon really is recessive or is incomplete dominant. My personal opinion, it doesn't matter because incomplete dominant works the same way as a recessive. We could argue that Mandarin is a recessive trait because the super Mandarin is so visual and the single Mandarins are not as visual. My take is just to make you think about, some of the markers, some of the possibilities, and maybe that, we're all working with science-based animal, but the reality is they're all heterozygous or homozygous or none of it. It's either or. It doesn't matter. I love the Monsoon project. If you're excited about it and you have some thoughts, please comment down below. I'm super curious to read you guys. And if you are not already subscribed to YouTube channel, please do go check our Instagram for daily snakes. I never know what to do with my hands when I do this. Go check our Instagram for daily snakes. Subscribe to YouTube channel and go check our Morph Market for available snakes. We'll see you soon. Cheers.